webinar, How to Use SurveyMonkey. My name is Sarah Miller, and I'm here to present our research analyst, Stephen Wood, and he's going to help you learn how to use SurveyMonkey a little bit easier today. So just a few things before we get into today's webinar. If you have any questions as we're proceeding through this Lunch and Learn, there should be a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to type questions in there, and we'll be sure to get through questions at the end of today's presentation. Also, today's webinar will be recorded, so if there is something that's presented that you'd like to reference at a later time, please know that today's webinar will be posted on our website, and you can access it at a later time. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Steve, and he'll be here to answer any questions you have about SurveyMonkey.
Hello, I'm Stephen Wood. Today I'm going to be showing you a couple ways you can use SurveyMonkey, which is a free and easy-to-use web-based service to conduct various types of surveys. To help better show and explain this tool, I'll be going through the process of creating a survey with various different types of questions to showing you how it will look when you send it to people, and taking a look at what the data will look like when it comes back. To start off, we need to go to the SurveyMonkey website, which is www.surveymonkey.com. For the first time that you use SurveyMonkey, you'll have to create your own account. But for the purposes of this webinar, I'm just going to use Child Care Aware of America's account in order to do this. Oops. When you log in, it will take you to the My Survey screen where you can see all of your currently active surveys. At any point during, or at any time while you're on the website, you can click on the button up in the upper right-hand corner that says Create Survey in order to start working out a new one. Once you click on this, it will take you to the Create Survey screen where you'll have an option to create a new survey from scratch, copy an existing survey, or use one of their expert survey templates. We're going to be creating a new one from scratch. Also, please note that the first time you log in and try to create a survey, this option to copy an existing survey will not be there. You'll need to pick a title and a category. The category isn't really so much important as the title is. You can see what the category is when you go and check your list of active surveys, but as long as you name the title something that's relatively descriptive, you shouldn't need to reference that. Just click Continue to proceed, and it takes you to the Edit Survey page. So the first thing that you're going to see is that you have a couple of options on themes. You can create custom themes, or you can use one of their predefined defaults in order to pick the color scheme that you would like to have on your survey. I'm just going to pick one at random. And now I'm going to show you how to start building your survey. The first thing you want to do is to add new questions. So in order to do that, you just click on the button that says Add Question, and it pops up with a box and asks you what type of question you want to build. I've personally found that it's easy to, or beneficial to include a paragraph or two at the beginning of the survey explaining some of the questions and purposes behind the survey that you're trying to get to. There's an option to just have descriptive text, so if you just click on that, then anything that you enter up here will just display as a text box. Sometimes it will pop up with certified questions from experts that have helped SurveyMonkey to build better questions that they've decided are scientifically sound. If you pick one of these questions that SurveyMonkey suggests to you, it'll erase whatever you currently have in here and fill out the rest of the question like it thinks you should. I don't ever use these because they really lock you into the specific question text and answers that they've provided, and most of the time you're going to want to do a survey that's tailored to your specific audience. So they're generally not the best But if you're just trying to get general survey questions to a specific audience that are asked very broadly, like the question that comes in front of every social studies survey that how do you approve or disapprove of the president's job performance, that's a very standard question that they would just provide. So if you just want to use that, you can just click it, and it'll fill in the text and the question responses for you. Once you have a question built, you click Save and Close, and it adds the question to the top. Since we don't want to just have a text, then we should add more questions. So go back to Add Question. And for future reference, if you just want to add one question and then add more continuously without having to close and reopen the Add Question box each time, then you can click Add, Save, and Add Next Question. And it will save the question you're working on and then bring up a new box that's blank. One of the first questions that I generally include on a survey is the demographic information question. You can come down here and see this demographic information US. There's also demographics information international, but there are very few differences between these. In fact, the only difference is that it changes state to state/province and zip code to zip/postal code. So I really don't see a difference between the two. I just always use US because we're only ever surveying US-based respondents at Child Care of America. But if you have international respondents, then you can use that one if you feel that that's beneficial to you. Now, you don't have to leave all of these fields the way that they're currently listed. If you see some that you don't feel a need to use at all, then you can uncheck the visibility box here. For example, say you don't really care whether someone gives you their phone number or not. You can just unclick the visible box, and now the phone number field won't even appear. But say, for example, you really want to get their email address. You really want it so badly that you don't want them to be able to proceed with the survey if they don't give it to you. Then you can click the Answer Required box. And what that does is anytime someone tries to proceed to the next page of the survey, if they have not completed or given you information in every field that has an answer required, it will not allow them to proceed, and it will give them an error message depending on what you specify down here. The default is just that this question requires an answer. Also, you can change how these fields will appear. So, for example, when we're surveying companies at Child Care of America, usually they're not companies. We're usually surveying the Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies. So here we would generally replace this with agency. You also have an option to change the size and placement of the questions, but I'll get to that in a minute. Save and close. Oh, I didn't answer. And you have to make sure that you include question text for every single question, even if you have these text boxes down here that require, provide additional information on what the respondent should be providing in that field. So for demographic information, I generally just repeat demographic information. So you see it popped up here, and it's got the star here, which means that this question has required fields in it. And you can see that this is kind of what the format is going to look like when the people come to take your survey. So if you don't like the way this looks, or if you want to change how the text boxes are arranged on the screen, then you can come back up here to Edit Question. Click that at any time, and it'll bring the same box back up as it was before you saved it. And it'll allow you to make changes as needed. So for example, say we realize we don't need a second address field, we can uncheck that box, save it, and now you can see that the second address field box is gone. So let's add a different type of a question, one that's actually trying to elicit information that we would be trying to survey. So for example, let's say that we are looking to get some information on how our agencies budget. So one way we can do this is, for this specific example, I'm going to use numerical text boxes. What numerical text boxes does is it requires a number to be the answer. It can't be any sort of special character, and it cannot be a letter. It can only be numbers 1 through 9 and 0. Or multiple numbers. It doesn't have to just be one. It can be any number up to a number that you can specify. So you have to remember when you're doing text boxes that are multiple, or when you're doing something similar to that, that the question text and the answer field labels both have to be taken into consideration when you're building the question. So since we're trying to get multiple pieces of information out of what's basically, according to SurveyMonkey, the same question, then when we're putting a question text up here, it's better to just give a general topic for the questions rather than the actual question itself. For example, if we're trying to get 6 pieces of information here, the percent of budget allocated staff salaries, the percent of budget allocated to professional development, the percent of budget allocated to overhead, and then the specific dollar amounts, then we would put those down here in the field labels. And each one has to be on its own line. Now, if I click Save and Close, you'll see that we now have one question that has 6 fields for answers. Now, it doesn't really look very pretty because the text boxes for the answers are very large and squished up against the labels, but we can change that by going back up to Edit Question, coming back down to Question Size and Placement, like I mentioned earlier, and then coming down here to where it says Column Width. Currently, it's set to 20% of the column width is dedicated for the label, and 80% is for the choices. But since we know that we're only going to have 2 numbers in here for the percentage of the budget, and maybe up to 7 if you're a really large CCR&R that has millions of dollars allocated to each of these, we're probably not going to need that much space for the answers that are given. So we can reduce that significantly by, say, flipping it to 80-20 and shrinking the box size down to 10 characters. We save and close now. Looks a lot prettier. You have a lot less space taken up by multiple rows for the same question. It's all on one space, and the text boxes are shoved all the way over to the side here. Now let's take a look at multiple choice questions, which are one of probably the most common type of question you'll have in a survey. So let's add a multiple choice question. There's 2 types of multiple choice questions you can have: a single answer and a multiple answer. The single answer is a question where you have multiple options that you can only pick one from, and obviously multiple answers, you can pick multiple of them. So let's say we want to know what their number of employees are. Say 1 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 49, 50 plus. So again, just like the previous question, you have to have all of your question options on different lines, and then when you hit Save and Close, it will bring up each of these in its own circle box. And you can see what it'll look like by clicking them, and notice you can only pick one. If this were a question that had the type of, if this was the type of question where you could have multiple answers, then we could just come up here and switch this, Save and Close, and now you can see you switch to boxes where you can check multiple at once. Now obviously for this specific question it doesn't make sense to be able to fall into more than one category, so we're just going to leave this as a single question. And again, you can fiddle around with the format a little bit. For example, if you don't want each question on its own row, you can change that. Give it 3, so now you've got only 2 rows but 3 columns. Now if you decide that you placed a question in the wrong spot, you can just click the Move button and then move it up to where you want it. And now there's you may notice that there's a button here called Add Question Logic. This is something that the basic profiles don't have, but it's pretty useful if you have questions that you only want specific respondents to answer. So, for example, say you only want to know the budget allocation of CCR&Rs that have more than 20 employees. So first off, you have to note that you can only have question logic that directs between pages and not between questions. Since pages are all loaded at once, if you only want certain people to see specific questions, you have to place them on a different page and route them to that accordingly. So we're just going to split the page here. You don't have to enter any information here. It's just for your own reference if you want to. And now I'm going to add the question logic that takes an answer to this one and directs it to page 2. And if you don't answer this, if you answer one of these other ones, we'll just take you directly to the end of the survey. So now you'll only come to this question if you answer 20 to 49 or 50 plus. Otherwise, it'll just take you direct. If you answer 1 to 4, 5 to 9, or 10 to 19, it'll just take you directly to the end of the survey. So now we can preview the survey to see what it looks like. And it opens up in preview mode. And if we just try and hit next here, you'll notice that it requires an answer. It doesn't tell us exactly which one specific box requires an answer, just that an answer is required. This is not my actual email address. Now, if we just go 1 to 4, next, end of survey, we're done. However, now if we pick this one, hit next, now we're taken to this question. And for numerical text boxes, you should probably note in the question that you are requiring just numbers, because people will tend to put numbers and a percent here. It doesn't actually force you to only give a number. It just will give you an answer if you give anything else. So if I hit done, it says please enter a positive number. People get confused because they did enter a positive number and they don't understand that they're being rejected because they put the symbol in there other than a number. You have another option with multiple boxes. You can do multiple text boxes. Now this, if you wanted actual information rather than just a number, now you'd be able to enter actual words. So in order to send your survey out to people, you click the button down at the bottom that I just clicked on that was send, and it takes you to this area where you can create a web link. So initially we'll just give you a random link, but you can customize that right here by clicking on that, and it lets you edit the specific section of your link that's specialized to your survey. You also can't have a space in there. So if you want to have spaces, it's best just to use underscores. When you hit save, this link is now live. You can notice it cut off a little bit here because the box that it actually shows the text only comes out a little bit. So you have to make sure you're copying the entire thing in order to send it appropriately. So just paste it up here. Go to the survey, and now this is the survey. So we can take it again really quick, but I'm just going to skip to the bottom. And then when you hit done, it takes you to this thank you page that just says thank you for taking this survey. Now, if you actually want to see what your data, when you're done with, once you see that you have people who have responded to your survey, you click over here, Analyze Results, and it shows you a quick breakdown of all the information that's been given. And it initially just shows it to you one page at a time. You can click View All Pages, or you can skip between pages if you just want to see specific pieces of information. And then if you actually want to see what the responses were in Excel format so that you can fiddle with them in a more detailed way, go to Download Responses, All responses collected will give you everything that you've collected, and then you have to put in your email address here. So when they're done compiling all that information, it'll send you an email and tell you that it's ready to download and give you a link that you can click on to do that. Sometimes if you have a really big survey, it can take a long time to collate all that information, but for a survey like this, it probably wouldn't take very long if we only have a couple of respondents. Some surveys can get up to several thousand, and that can take a while.
Okay, now we're going to answer some questions here. So I'm just going to pull up any questions that have come into the questions box. All right, we have a few questions in here. The first question here is there a recommended number of questions to have on a survey?
There really is no recommended specific number of questions that you should ask on any given survey. It's best to keep it short and sweet because the longer a survey is, the more likely it is for people to lose interest and stop answering questions. Also, each question that you ask contaminates all of the following questions. So that's one reason, for example, they always give the do you approve or disapprove of the president's job as the very first question on a survey, because they want that to be an accurate response. And if they start asking you questions about specific things after that, you'll be thinking about those specific topics and whether you agree or disagree with the president's approval on those specific topics, which will influence your decision about whether you agree or disagree with their performance in general. So as a general rule, it's best to keep your survey short and sweet, ask as many questions as required to get the information that you're looking for, and no more than that. However, you can have surveys that go up to several hundreds of questions, and we have had those that we've sent out before when we've been doing very detailed profiles of CCR&Rs.
Great. There's another question in here. Is there a paid version of SurveyMonkey? And if so, how does it differ from the free version?
The paid version of SurveyMonkey, I'm not sure how much it costs. Child Care America pays for that. But there is an advanced profile version that will allow you to do things like question logic that are not available in the basic version. The basic version is free. Anyone can use it. You can sign up, and probably takes about 5 minutes. I've actually signed up myself for my own personal purposes, and it is very useful when you're doing surveys for any number of purposes. A lot of graduate students use them to conduct survey research for their grad school programs. So it's very useful to use even if you don't have a budget allocated to pay SurveyMonkey to do these things for you. But you can still get the services for free.
Great. Another great question that just came in here is, I have heard that when taking a survey on SurveyMonkey, only one survey can be completed per computer. Is there any way around this when trying to have numerous children complete the same survey from the same computer?
Yes, there is a way around that. It's actually very simple. If you come up to the survey and you go over to Collect Responses, take a look at your collector, which is our web link, click on that, come over to Change Settings, and allow multiple responses. It defaults to no, that you can only allow one response per computer. If you say yes, then any number of responses can come in from any computer. We use this a lot when we're having people go out and do something and then come back and tell us how that experience went. It's easier if we just have one computer where people can take the survey, hit OK, and then move on. So yes, the answer to that is yes, you can have people do multiple responses on one computer. However, if you do that, then you might have difficulty with allowing responses to be edited. So also by default, someone can come back and edit the question answers that they gave if they find that, oops, I have updated information, or oops, I answered that wrong. They can go back and change it. But if you allow multiple responses per computer, then you should probably not allow them to go back and change their responses, because otherwise they could be editing responses to a survey that was not theirs.
Great. A few more questions coming in here. Is there a maximum or minimum number of questions allowed on the free version?
I do not believe that there is a maximum number of questions allowed, and there is a minimum. The minimum number of questions you can have on a survey is 1. If you don't have at least one question, then you can't really create the survey. So really, it's just whatever whatever you decide is best for you. To my best of my knowledge, there is no maximum number of questions.
Great. We did have someone type in, actually, regarding the pasty, and it looks like there's a fee between $200 and about $800, depending on the level that you're looking to purchase. But I'm sure that information is available on their website. A couple other questions here. We just have time for a couple more. How do you filter for specific questions and not all the questions?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. I assume you're talking about when you're looking at the answers. Can you be a little bit more specific? Because if you just want to see answers to specific questions, then you can click Browse Responses or Filter Responses. If you just want to filter the surveys based on, say, people who responded in your state or a specific state, then you can do a response filter, change specific, say that you only want people who responded with states and Virginia, and then when you can apply that filter, and then your responses, all of the responses that you see will only come from state people who have given responses that indicate they're from that state.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we are out of time, and I apologize that we couldn't get through all of the questions that came in today. But we do have Steve's email address up here if you would like to contact him following today's webinar. And just as a last reminder, today's webinar was recorded, and we will be posting the link on our website. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Stephen, and we thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.